and welcome back to Public Report. And for this segment, our guest is Dennis Richards, and he is the Hillside Hospice Chaplain. Our issue is health, and our topic for this segment is grief support. Chaplain Richards, it's nice to have you on the program.
It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Tell us about yourself and your position as the Hillside Hospice Chaplain.
I was a pastor in California for 13 years, and so I was in ministry and was already involved in dealing with bereavement, dealing with life and death matters. And so when we moved back to Wisconsin, it just was a natural transition into being a chaplain. So I'm excited for the opportunity to work with Hillside Hospice in that regard. And so I have the opportunity to reach out to families when they're often most vulnerable, often hurting and in need. And it's just been a great experience.
What are the advantages of a hospice worker being both a chaplain and also a bereavement counselor?
Being a chaplain and bereavement counselor allows you to naturally transition as the patient is dying, the loved one is dying, and then after their death. My desire is to bring them comfort, bring them hope. And if you are a bereavement counselor but you don't know the family before the loved one passes away, it's very difficult to help them because they're only going to go to someone they trust, someone they know. And so as a chaplain, I'm able to get to know the patient, the loved one, get to know the family, and I'm able to reach out to them and gain their trust and help them in that regard because the bereavement begins early. And the sooner that we can begin to deal with, the better. And that way I'm able to transition right into working with them, helping them through the grief journey and that bereavement for up to a year after the loved one passes away.
Okay. How do you as a chaplain help to prepare the patient facing the end of life and then also their family members or their loved ones?
One of the important aspects of hospice is to, of course, provide comfort care. And one of the ways we provide comfort care is providing information. People have a fear of the unknown, and with fear comes anxiety and stress. And so as a person is coming into the last stages of their life and to the dying process, the patient has a lot of anxiety of the unknown. So we're able to give them the information they need, and the family as well, to help them know what could happen or what will likely happen in this process. At the same time, as a chaplain, I'm able to also help them with the unknown of the future, of the afterlife. That's what I do. And so I give them that hope, that understanding. It brings a lot of stress relief, a lot of peace into their life, and that goes a long way toward helping them in the entire process.
Right. When does bereavement begin as it regards the death of a loved one?
That is a good question. A lot of times we think the family is not hurting until after the loved one passes away. But to be honest, the grieving process, the journey starts the moment they begin to realize and come to grips with the loss. As soon as they're told that they have cancer that's terminal, they have something that's going to take place in their life that there's going to be a great loss. And so the grieving process can begin then, although it's still not the same as when the loved one passes away. But the loved one who's dying is grieving as well. And so we need to be there for them as well as for the family in the entire journey.
Now, from your experience, how does grief affect the person dying?
Well, it brings a lot of anxiety into their life. It's natural. Again, the unknown, the stress. They don't know how much pain they're going to be in. They don't know what to expect. The more we can come alongside them and educate them, the better. There's going to be times when they're confused. And as the loved one goes further on in the dying process, there will be more and more confusion. And those will sometimes scare the family. They don't understand why their loved one is saying these things or doing these things. And so we're able to help them in that regard as well.
And how important is it to let the grieving process take place?
When a person doesn't allow themselves to grieve, it can really bring depression. The earlier you can start the grieving process, the better, because you're starting the healing process earlier. When you don't grieve as you should, you're holding it in, you're not going through the natural process of that healing. The end result is depression, often anger, bitterness, you have guilt, and all of that leads to anxiety, and it affects every part of your life and your relationships as well.
Right. Is the grieving experience unique to every individual, meaning do people grieve differently?
Oh, very much so. Just as we are each unique before God as His creation, every one of us have a unique background. We have unique relationships, and so no one has the exact experience or grieving experience that someone else might have. And so we have to be careful not to say that we completely understand what someone's going through. We maybe have a good idea, but their grief and what they're experiencing, that journey is very unique to them as an individual.
What might happen, say, initially when someone is going through the grieving process, and then what might they experience after a certain amount of time has gone by?
With the patient or with the family?
Well, either one.
Okay.
No.
With the patient, in the beginning, again, there's the unknown, and they're going to begin grieving then.
Right.
They're going to be upset. It's natural that we desire to stay alive.
Right.
And we have the unknown of the future. There's also the grieving for the patient as they have a love for their family. And so often, a lot of their grief and stress is for their family. How will my loved one survive without me? How is this going to impact the family? And for the family, there's the loss of the loved one, the one you love. There's the emotional stress of that. But at the same time, you have additional losses. What did that person do in your life? How were you involved with that person? If it's a spouse, you have a lot of losses that take place when you lose your spouse. Maybe there's someone who did maintenance for you. They're your friend, and they're the one who comforts you and encourages you. And so you have all of these losses that take place, even in the beginning, as you begin to realize what's going to take place.
Now, you were just talking about a loss. What are some of the types of losses that might negatively impact us, but maybe we don't realize it?
When we grieve, one of the reasons it's unique is because of our background. Okay. Each one of us have multiple losses, and sometimes we don't stop to think about all the losses we have. Losses come in all kinds of shapes and sizes and forms. For example, you may have a loss in divorce. You may have a loss just from your previous dating relationships. Okay. You have losses maybe in the fact you were never able to have children. Maybe with the way unemployment is today, you're looking for work, and over and over again you've been rejected. And so you've got these losses in your life that add up and influences when we're grieving. Now, if you have some of these losses going on at the same time, now you've got some pretty complex grief going on, and you're going to need some help.
How would you recommend a family member or a friend respond, or even not respond maybe, to a person who's grieving the loss of a loved one?
I usually warn families up front after the loved one's passed away and they're going to have a service. I tell them that when they have the visitation, don't be surprised at what people say.
Okay.
People don't know what to say. That's just a reality. They're sincere, they mean well, but they're going to say some things that are almost rude and they don't even know it. When you come alongside someone who's grieving, don't tell them you know exactly how they feel to begin with. You don't have to talk their ear off. What they need is a good listener. They need someone who will come alongside them and mourn with those who mourn, as the Bible says. Weep with them, mourn with them, show you care, and just have a listening ear. It's also important to not just offer help to them, because if you say, just call me when you need something, it's not going to happen. For one thing, that family isn't thinking clearly. They're going through great turmoil and stress. So if you see something that could be helpful, do it for them. Cut the grass. Don't ask them. And so I think it goes a long way just to reach out to them. That's a great way to do it. Again, be careful not to make comments that could be taken the wrong way. I mean, sometimes people will say, well, you have a death of a child, and they'll say, well, at least God blessed you with more children.
Right.
Things like that are very harmful and very hurtful. And so we have to be very careful in what we say.
Can times of grief come unexpectedly, even after a season has passed where the grieving person, the loved one, has gone on, but can they now all of a sudden maybe experience more grief and not even realize it was still there?
Yes, that's what's difficult about it. You go through various stages of grief, even though you may not go in those stages in the exact order as someone else. But the reality is, you are going to get better as time goes on. You will heal, but you will still always have some pain from the loss of that loved one. The reality is that can sometimes flood back all of a sudden.
Okay.
It can just come back. It'll catch you where you have a meltdown in the grocery store.
Right.
You see something that reminds you of your loved one, and it just hits you. All those emotions, all those feelings come rushing back. The good news is that as time goes on, it's less often and it has less impact.
Right.
But you're always going to have a little bit of that grief for that loved one.
And what type of help is available for those dealing with grief?
I would say in your community, start with your own church.
Okay.
Start with your own pastor and what they have set up. If you're not a part of a church, maybe consider it. And again, if you're not a part of any kind of church or ministry, there are a lot of organizations out there at the county level as well as the local level. You can also go to various funeral homes on their websites. They often direct people to various bereavement groups. Hospice groups have bereavement groups, as we do. And so they can go a long way to help you in dealing with your grief. And it's nice to talk to other people as well who are going through some of the same things that you're going through, and you'll find encouragement and strength there.
All right. And why is it important to reach out for help?
Well, it's because grief is something that's often bigger than us.
Okay.
We're dealing with some great emotions, great losses. And so sometimes it helps just to go and get counsel from someone else. Get guidance, especially early on, because you don't want to make big decisions early on in the process. So you want to make sure you're thinking clearly. And so it helps when you go to somebody else or go to a group where they can give you some guidance, some direction to help you know you're not going crazy,
Right.
that what you're experiencing is natural. And at the same time, you can establish some relationships that you can then use and have alongside you in the years to come.
How important is it to seek help in helping children to go through the grieving process, particularly younger children?
I know the temptation for adults is to say, I want to protect my child.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to take them to the funeral of grandma or even their mom, sometimes their dad. So the temptation is to say, let's not say anything and maybe just make up a story and then tell them later. The truth is, everyone needs a time to grieve. A child needs that time especially, and they need the support of family around them. So if they're not told till later, they're grieving more in an isolated fashion. It's very important that we all take the time to grieve, and I'm very supportive of memorial services because it begins that healing process. Even with the children, and the children can see how the parents are grieving. They have guidance and direction. They have support, and they need that closure as well as everyone else. And so it's very important. One of the things I do as I'm meeting with families, if I'm going to lead the service for a memorial, I meet with the family first, because not only does it give me an understanding of the individual I'm going to be talking about,
Right.
the loved one, but it also gives an opportunity for the family to begin that healing process, to sit around the table and begin to reminisce about the loved one, and it goes a long way to begin that healing process.
And how important is it to maybe include children in the planning of that funeral or the memorial service?
Well, to be honest, children have unique ideas, unique perspectives, and there's something beautiful about a memorial service when the child is involved. They might be able to read a poem, they might be able to get up and say something, they might be able to sing or play an instrument, and so they're able to demonstrate their love in a unique way that even from an adult. And it goes a long way to show who that person was that you're honoring. If they were a grandmother, then what better way to show what a great grandmother she was than from the heart of a grandchild.
Well, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
We've been speaking with Dennis Richards, and he's the Hillside Hospice Chaplain. Our issue has been health, and our topic, grief support. Thank you for viewing Public Report.
The material on this program does not necessarily reflect the views of WWRS.